That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about House of Darkness, the 12th film directed by Neil LaBute, which is being released courtesy of Saban Films on September 9th, 2022. And it is Mr. LaBute's attempt at giving us vampire realness. But it is not.
We reviewed his other film this year so far, Out of the Blue.
Yeah.
And I borderline hated that movie. Mm-hmm. And I like this movie even less.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know what is going on with this once renowned director.
Which was especially disappointing because I don't think I realized this film, House of Darkness, was from Neil LaBute. And then we had just filmed a review for Barbarian, which you loved. So I think I had Justin Long on my mind and thinking that this is going to be another great horror film. And I will say Justin Long does a good job with what he was given. But this screenplay, it's so stale and tedious and repetitive.
It's just real dull and stagnant, and it feels a little, at least a decade too late, or 2 decades too late for what it's doing. Which is funny because we just reviewed The Invitation and thought, what a great idea to have like a feminist version of Dracula, which I don't think The Invitation is doing that well either. But this is kind of a version of that, but in the most obvious way possible. But from that thing that LaBute likes to do, was showing how terrible and misogynistic men are and how appropriate it is for the women that will conquer and vanquish them.
The basic story is very basic. So Justin Long picks up Kate Bosworth at like a bar. And we don't see any of this. We just see them pulling up at her house. So she has allowed him to take her home, and then she's inviting him in. And the minute Justin Long gets out of that car, the dialogue is just repetitive. It's like him flirting with her and being awkward, then putting his foot in his mouth, and then she kind of snaps at him like she's about to get mad, but then everything gets smoothed over, and it just repeats that for the first 30 minutes. They're sitting in like the drawing room and doing this this weird exchange for literally 30 minutes that amounts to nothing. If you know the basic plot synopsis, then it's obvious that Kate Bosworth's character is going to do something awful to him. So we're just waiting for clues as to what that might be. Then, at a point, Kate Bosworth is like about to perform oral sex on Justin Long when all of a sudden a woman pops up. And it turns out to be Kate's sister.
Lucy. Kate's name, by the way, is Mina.
Mina.
Like, as in, this is actually supposed to be apparently a reimagining of Dracula. So Kate Bosworth is Mina, and her sister Lucy, played by Gia Crovatin, walks in.
And so then, of course, Justin, he's also he keeps saying he's drunk, but then it sort of varies, like how sober or is he not, whatever. But of course, he's startled and apologetic, and they're like, no, don't be sorry. Then Kate's like, well, let me excuse myself for a second. And she's gone for a long time while Justin Long and the sister go for like a tour of the house. And they end up on this big balcony. And it's just a lot of talking. Same setup where Justin is being awkward, puts his foot in his mouth. Then the sister kind of seems like she's going to jump down his throat, but then it gets smoothed over. Back and forth.
But always doing that thing that men do where they're pushing the boundaries and using language to... that's walking a fine line, so that if they take the bait, he's in like Flint, and if they don't, he can prove to be ignorant about the vibes he's giving off.
Which is a thing that does happen, but
yes.
The problem is, oh my God, it's just like these two sisters are playing with him, like a cat playing with, but it's not witty enough, it's not sophisticated enough to be fun. This is no like, I mean, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? You know what I mean? It's not fun to experience. It's just, it was so tedious. I was so uncomfortable. Then the sister says, oh, we like to tell stories, ghost stories.
Tell stories and play games, yeah.
So you, Justin, tell us a story. And he tells some stupid story, which is basically him picking up a woman at a bar and wanting to hook up with the lady and her sister. And they're like, that's a whack story. It's not even a ghost story. And then Mina, Lucy, starts telling a story. And the story she tells, which is obvious from the minute she says, I like to tell stories, that it's going to be about what's going to happen to Justin tonight. She tells a story of a young girl, long time ago, who lived with her mom and dad in like a little college down by the river.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. And both of the girl's parents die, so she's left to raise herself. And one night, a group of men come to her home, brutally rape her repeatedly, and leave her for dead in a field. But late that night, a family comes through.
Very I spit on your grave, that.
Like mom, dad, and 2 daughters. And they save her. And we find out that family that saved this little girl, they were vampires. So they converted her. And now, that girl, with her 2 new adoptive sisters, I guess, their mission in life is to travel from city to city around the world and kill douchebag men.
A la Promising Young Women.
Right. So, of course, that's what's going to happen to Justin. But then Justin goes, oh, well, lucky for me, there are only 2 sisters here. And then the only sort of thing close to a scare is the 3rd sister pops out of nowhere, like, hey. And then it becomes clear they're going to get his ass. And they do. They eat him up like vampires at the end.
Yes, he finds himself locked in, responds in kind, as in, like, shows his true colors as, the real...
Which is pointless, because the way it's set up, like, they're going to kill him no matter what.
Right. Whether he's a good guy or bad
That would have been fun if the audience, we thought, well, maybe if he can redeem himself, they'll let him go. Like, because they like games. There's no chance.
But there should have been... Because even though he is kind of a dink as a person, he's not the worst...
No.
There was a worse man they could have taken that night at the bar. I'm sure of it. And interestingly, this is kind of just a few shades away from the same character Justin Long's playing in Barbarian. But it doesn't play with the ambiguity of what they're doing either. Kind of like The Last Supper, if you remember, with Cameron Diaz, where they would invite people over and kind of give them an ethical dilemma. And once they didn't like what they heard, they would kill the people and bury them in the backyard and grow tomatoes. But it would have been more interesting to see that. Like, was there ever a chance that they wouldn't eat this man?
You know what would have been a better story? Is if these 3 sisters, same game plan, if the first 45 minutes of the film are these 3 sisters out. The other thing, too, is this film's so contained in this castle and within, like, 2 rooms and a balcony. But it would have been better to have these 3 sisters out at like a bar or something. And we spend the first half of the film with them interacting with different men. And like you said, sort of figuring out who's the worst of the lot.
Selecting their prey.
But as the audience, we don't know what they're doing, except it's like 3 pretty women out for a night of fun. They bring the 3 guys back because we find out they all live together. We don't know they're sisters. And then when all the guys are together and they're drinking and drunk, they tell this story. Which admittedly was kind of creepy.
It was, but it doesn't have an impact.
No.
Because there's no tone leading up to it. There's no mood.
And we already know that it's going to be about what's happening to him tonight. And then they do in with the 3 men. Like, I just needed more. It was so... Again, I hate the word boring, but I was so bored watching this thing.
It was very stale. It was like a very stale comedy of manners. Again, doing what Neil LaBute was doing in 1997 within the Company of Men, with a character like the Justin Long characters like the men in that film, seems a lot more cutting edge, because we're seeing, kind of behind the curtain of how a lot of men speak about women. And this just feels, in the wake of Me Too, that like this is his character, whose name is Hapgood. He seems to be responding as like a man now in the wake of Me Too.
Who's sensitive to it.
Like, well, can I call you sexy? Is that going to is the women's movement going to get mad at me calling you sexy?
And when Kate says like it's fine, you can see he like has some sort of relief that he can sort of be himself, which is kind of like a creep, like an inconsiderate creep.
I think that Justin Long and Kate Bosworth are actually, for the first half hour especially, I think they do a really good job of navigating around what is an uncomfortable scenario. It's just there's no payoff after that. But I do kind of like both of them and the energy that they're giving, and because she asked him about if he's a liar, and he's like, well, I'm a fibber. And then she leaves to make drinks 2 times in this film. That takes a very long time for her to make drinks, and he calls his buddy at the bar in a conversation that she later hears, where we get a real sense of what kind of person he is.
Yeah. So the first 30 minutes of them just sitting there doing this exchange was tedious to me, even though they were doing a good job with what they were given. And then it's interrupted by Justin thinking he heard something. So then I'm like, oh, something's going to happen. And then he realized, like, oh, I guess it was nothing. Because he's questioning Kate, and she's like, oh, there shouldn't be anyone here. And he's like, okay. And then they go back to the banter, so it's more waiting.
No, she says, not that I know.
Right. Well, because her character is being very clear in the end. It is made very clear that she doesn't lie. Like, she was never really lying. She was just omitting some things and bending the truth. But she didn't lie. So then so then there's more of that same stupid exchange. Then the sister pops up. Kate leaves. And then we get like a 5 or 6 minute scene with Justin, like what we find out is him dreaming about being in like this underground tunnel of caves.
Like catacombs almost.
And then there are all these like men's shoes in a pile, which would indicate that like where are the bodies of the people who own these shoes. And then he wakes up from the nightmare.
After breaking his leg in the nightmare.
Oh, that's my next note. But in the end, we find out when Lucy starts to tell the ghost story that she talks about how all of those 3 sisters who travel around the world, they buy these homes and then they put these men in these caves. So then Justin puts 2 and 2 together like, wait, why are you talking about caves? I just had a nightmare about caves. I thought that dream he had was it felt out of place, because are they implying that these vampires sort of influenced him to dream that?
So there was some kind of precognition he had about what was going to happen to him.
Anyway, in the dream, we get like 5 minutes of him wandering around yelling.
Screaming.
Like, hello, hello.
And I was like, what does the script look like at this point?
So we just got 45 minutes of almost nothing, and now we got another 5 minutes of him just wandering around these caves. Then he sees like a light above, and there's like a hill of like dirt that leads up to it. So he's like, great, I'm going to run up and escape.
Like Kate Bush, he runs up that hill.
He runs up that hill and he falls. And the injury he sustains, in the history of the world, you have never seen someone sustain an injury like this from falling. Like, it looks like his knee exploded and his patella shot out. It's just such an odd looking injury.
It's almost like they felt like we have to do something explicit here for the attention span of the audience, much like the sisters eating him at the end, which is more gory than I think you'd expect.
At the point when Lucy starts talking about telling a ghost story, I was like, literally anything will be better than what I'm watching.
I know,
right
I'm
now.
like, please
tell a good story. And then they let Justin tell the story first. And his story is just as bad as this movie. So it's like, no, they did not. Just make me sit through an hour of this bad movie and then make this character recount the bad movie to me. That was terrible. My final note is this feels like maybe Neil LaBute knows someone who owns a castle. And he thought, let me write a vampire movie in a castle. Because it just feels so contained and just not inspired at all.
Also kind of tired of all this sudden like rush of films directly referencing Dracula. Make something new. Do something new. As it opened, I was hoping it would be like a new kind of lo-fi art house vampire film, which is a subgenre I really like, in the vein of something like Zan Cassavetes' Kiss the Damned from a decade or so ago, which I highly recommend if you've never seen. But with Anna Mugalalis and that growl that she has for a voice. But this was just really, it was like eating really stale food, but but it was sustenance that I didn't need in the first place. I don't know. I was just very disappointed, especially because Out of the Blue I thought was just ridiculous and derivative, and I was hoping. I don't know. It just, with these 2 films in a row, it feels like LaBute is just taking a text off the wall that he likes, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to make a film like that."
I cannot recommend this. If you're trying to watch like a fun horror film, like on a Friday night, this is not it at all.
Or even a cerebral kind of psychological thriller that's kind of in its trying to be a unique horror perspective on gender norms. This is not it.
Nope.
This isn't that either.
Kate Bosworth does look very nice.
She does. I liked her hair.
And her sister Lucy, I like her little outfit.
Mm-hmm. And that actress was. I liked her reactions to Justin a lot when he's trying to kind of flirt with Lucy.
I think all of the performances are fine. It's just like this really, if you squeeze the juice out of this movie, this could have been like a 10-minute short of like a hookup gone wrong. Oh, and that's again, basically what it is. It really could have been a short film.
Again, yes, and talking about like a feminist perspective of Dracula, this is not from the women's perspectives at all.
No.
Which I think is also part of the problem, which makes it feel kind of like, why is he our main focal point? He's this empty cipher of a person that's just a dick.
What would you give it?
I think 1 out of 5, because the performers are fine.
Okay. What did I give Out of the Blue?
I think you gave it 1.
I dislike this more than Out of the Blue, but well, I agree. I wouldn't give it 0.5 because I do think the 3 main performances are good. Mm-hmm. So I guess I give it 1. I can't imagine anyone liking this movie.
I don't know.
All done?
Yeah.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.